after about 3.5 years in investment banking, trying so hard, I got made redundant. Yeah. But that was also my first, that was my first moment where I became disillusioned with corporate, because I knew that you could have a, XYZ salary today, tomorrow it could be zero.
I'm probably gonna stay in my job maybe, or I don't know if I want to move right now, but I've got to diversify my income, I've got to add an additional stream. What kind of practical things or mindsets could they be working on now?
There are 3 things you probably need to sacrifice if you're looking to increase your sources of income. Number 1 is your time. You're going to have to sacrifice your time. It's the food that success eats.
What's a better way for us to focus our attention when we are bringing these incomes on? What would the Lord have me doing right now?
Welcome to the Magnify Conversations. My name's Ruth, and I'm the founder and CEO of Magnify.
And my name's Rachel, and I'm one of the hosts of this podcast.
Magnify is a global community and content platform focused on equipping women like you to grow in and impact your sphere of influence. We truly want to see you thrive in all areas of life and want to display what faith can look like at the center of that too.
We started the conversations because we wanted to have real discussions about things that matter: money, relationships, and work, all through the lens of faith and our relationship with God.
Ultimately, we know as multifaceted women, things are rarely one size fits all. So we speak with many different women who are from our community and hear their stories. We hope you enjoy this episode of the Magnify Conversations.
For today's episode, we had the honor of being joined by Tomiwa Da-Silva, and we got into how we can break the paycheck to paycheck cycle in our finances.
Tomiwa is a business coach specializing in empowering women to transform their expertise into lucrative ventures, making their 9-to-5 optional.
She gave all the practical insights into how we can change our financial position, and also shared her own financial journey to where she is today.
Let's get into the conversation. So let's get into this conversation. Yes. Tomiwa, thank you for joining us. Rachel and I are so excited to have this conversation about really multiple streams of income, but the realities of that and how faith plays a part in that. I think right now it's so popular to stop this corporate 9-to-5 and try and venture out, but a lot of us don't understand what it really takes, whether it's a true faith decision, whether some people are just gifted to take on entrepreneurship. So please share with us some of your story and how this journey started for you.
Yeah, so I started, first of all, I'm so excited to be with you guys, hang out. I started my journey in corporate sort of 11 years ago. So straight out of uni, I actually took time off work to go for my graduation. So straight out of uni, already got a job, full-time job, and then investment bank is like the best thing. And it was one of those planned with my parents, but my dad is very much type A and kind of instilled that kind of behavior in me. So it's very much, you're going to graduate, you're going to do economics, and then you're going to start at investment bank. And I did that, and that was very much, again, living to their expectations. So, I got that job, and then I knew quite early on that it wasn't, I knew that I knew that I knew that it wasn't the, role for me. It wasn't what I was meant to do, but then it looked so good on paper. And I think it started to form a part of my identity. But my parents were so proud, right? So they always talk, she works at such and such investment bank, and then I think that really, I held on to that for such a long time. And so I started my role. They really, really struggled. I'll be very honest with you. Right. Really, really struggled. They knew it wasn't for me, but I was just like trying. And then I moved into consulting. So afterwards, the one thing which I haven't actually spoken to a lot of people about, apart from maybe people in my inner circle, was after about 3.5 years in investment banking, trying so hard, I got made redundant. Wow. And that was, I was probably like 22 or 23 at that time. That's quite early in your career to experience that. Yeah. But that was also my first, that was my first moment where I became disillusioned with corporate, because I knew that you could have a, XYZ salary today, tomorrow it could be zero. So that was that first pivotal moment. So I got, made redundant, and then lucky my parents were there, really supportive. And then I, was supported to go and do a master's, and then I moved into consulting. And then in consulting, I was like, okay, I like consulting, but, I'm growing, I'm doing lots of things. But I still, I've always had a side hustle. I've always been helping people with their businesses, and I wouldn't be able to let that go. It was just always there. So I help people here and there. And then in my consulting career, I moved again, like around different companies, looking for that, again, next best thing. And then after a while, I was just like, no, I think I'm gonna do it on my own. My business was doing really well at the time.
What was the business that
So I started doing consulting, so marketing agency. I guess background is I own a marketing agency, but I'm also a business coach for women who are like starting their own businesses. So I was helping lots of women. I was doing marketing for small companies, small brands, and I was like, why can't I just do it, this? Side note is I also started a ministry called Wealthy Women, and that's for like profitable, again, women in the marketplace, just that like boldness, audacity, the spirit of excellence, all of that stuff. So I was doing those three things, and after a while I thought, like, I need to focus, and I wasn't letting my ministry or my business go. So something had to give at that point.
I'm so interested because you used the word ministry for what you were doing, and then you have this normal, somewhat 9 to 5, and then you're consulting as well. Yeah. Why did you call that a ministry? What was it? What was the distinction between? Because some people, their banking job is their ministry, right? So what is the distinction?
That's true, actually. Everything we do, I think every time we step out into the world, we are ministering.
Yeah.
But I think maybe that was maybe a bit more formal because it was like prayers. So we used to do, up till now, we do Monday prayers, and we're praying about sort of women in careers, in business. And we had Bible study, we had a conference, a Christian conference. So it was very focused on biblical principles to sort of excellence in the marketplace. So that's why I kind of maybe segregate that a bit. But I do share my message through all of my different ventures. So yeah, I think that last job I had was such a great job. In fact, I had recently gotten promoted. So I got promoted to head of department, directorship. It was me, everybody who got promoted at that time. There was, I think, about 6 of us. Everyone else was white male, I'll say that, and 35 years of experience. And there was me with 10 years of experience. And so it was a big promotion. And after that, I still felt that voice saying, that's not what you're meant to be doing, right? So it was literally the wrongest time, if I say wrongest time to quit. But then that's how I knew it was God, because I just had so much peace around leaving, even though I was at the sort of top of, my career at the time.
How I just have so many practical questions.
Yeah.
How on earth were you doing a corporate job and all these side hustles? Like, can you actually quantify what was your life like at the time? And the reason I ask is because in this conversation, for myself and probably Sinead as well, and to the Magnify community, we obviously are interested in additional streams of income and not just living paycheck to paycheck, relying on the single job. Yeah. And in a cost of living crisis, can we really do that anyway? I suppose is part of the question. But I suppose I'm wondering, like, how did you actually find the time to do these things?
Yeah.
I just need to know, how did that work?
So I had my day job, and, I've been a bit lucky in that I've had, like, jobs which I would work 8 to 6, 8 to 6-ish, 8 to 7-ish. So I had my job, and then I had my business, which was like the coaching and consulting. So that was one. And then my ministry is just more prayer. So that's not, a business.
Yeah.
It's just but for me, I had to sacrifice. Like, I knew what the long-term goal was. I was like, one, I don't like my salary alone. I feel like I'm having to either pick between saving, spending, and investing. And that's what I find with lots of women. You don't find a lot of people who can do all three. Like, you find that the year that you travel a lot, you don't really maybe invest a lot. The year that you save a lot, maybe you don't really spend a lot, and I just don't know that that's the life that God has called us to live on this earth, where you have to kind of be like, oh, I'm going to cut back, or, I'm going to do this. So for me, I really struggled with that. And that was, I need the extra source of income. So I had to sacrifice a lot. And that's why when I work with people now, I'm like, something has to give. Like, if you want it really bad, something has to give. So practically speaking, I used to wake up early. So I became a morning person because of my business, because of my side hustle. And so I wake up quite early to do like a 5 to 7 on my business, and then go to work. And then I couldn't work, I don't work in the evenings. I'm not an evening person at all. So I do 5 to 7 a.m., just do a couple of things in my business, have a plan. What do I need to do this week? And then I'll work on that. And I'll go to work. And then in the evening, I'm like, shut down. nothing. Some people are evening people, and it's not forever. So now, obviously, I don't do that.
Okay.
And once my business was set up and running, I didn't have to do that all of the time. But there was a time I had to create a brand. I had to get known in the industry. I had to spend some time on content creation, you know, those practical things. I had to send emails. I had to do things like that. So I wake up early, but I also created templates around my business. So that say things like, you know, questions that clients will ask all the time. I had it written on my phone notes.
Right.
So I'll just, if someone sent me an email doing work, I'll just copy paste, you know, little things like that. So it's not easy, but I think if you have that long-term picture, it's like, okay, I knew I wanted to leave. I was working towards that. So it's like, I'm going to sacrifice my time a bit.
In the short term.
In the short term.
I have so many questions, but I think for me, I want to go back to when you said your parents kind of pushed you towards that economics, then you're going to do this, right?
Yeah.
Because I don't think your skill set is normal. Like, to be able to do those three things, I couldn't even do that. My job is enough for me. So do you think even your personality or your actual raw talent of being able to do these other businesses was just always there and it was not tapped into? Because it takes a level of passion, motivation, and talent to say, I'm going to get up in the morning and I'm going to do this. It can't just be money alone that drives people, because having a job in finance, in that, you know, in the space that you were in, is a good salary for most people. So do you feel that there was this internal passion that was like, you can do this and you're good at this already? Just that decision making that you were doing when you were saying, I'm going to somehow have a plan to stop this.
Yeah.
There must have, what was that driver that was telling you, I can stop this and I know I'll be good at it?
I think maybe that's where the God factor, I wouldn't say maybe, for sure, that's where the God factor comes in, where we're all giving different skills. There's some things that I'm sure, you know, I know you can do that I could never do. There's some things that other people can do that I can never do. So I think that's where that God factor comes in. I felt like, you know, sometimes even my friends say to me, I don't know how you're able to do all these things and you do them quite well and you're still like, you know, you're here, you're still like a joy, you're still a light, you're not burnt out. And sometimes I do ask myself, but then that's how I know it's God.
Right.
That's how I know it's God, because I could sit here and be like, oh, it's because I'm so motivated. I'm so like, I'm such a hard worker, but I know that's like the Holy Spirit and God, and, you know, tapping into that. I didn't always know it was there, because my walk, I would say, when I became so saved, I was like, I was always a Christian, but I think that ability to do multiple different things and do them well strengthened as my walk with God strengthened. Yeah.
What about because you talked about like you weren't enjoying investment banking. So it's kind of like you've done it, you've got these side hustles, so you've got a bit of reliance. But I actually think that's still a massive faith step to hand in your resignation and go fully. Like you're responsible. There's no one sending you a paycheck every month. It's like, I'm going to be doing that now. Can you just talk through like what that was like? Because I know I don't know about you, Sinead, like, but sometimes even if I feel God has asked me to do something, I'm still like, really? You're asking me to give this up? Or you're asking me to take this step? It's still, there's definitely a lot of probably fear involved in that too, I imagine.
Absolutely. It was very, you know, two things. One, that security of, you know, when you're a corporate girly, you just know, like, on the 27th of the month, bam, this is coming in.
Party time.
But also it becomes a part of your identity. A lot of times you meet new people and you say, oh, introduce yourself. And I hardly hear introductions that don't also have, I'm VP at such and such,
100%.
or I'm an associate at such and such, because we've made work a part of our identity. 100%. So I remember speaking to one of my closest friends at the time, and I said, one of the things I'm really struggling with is going to social events and people say, oh, what do you do? Or, oh, I used to at such and such company. And I'm like, no. And even though I know I'm doing so much and like my business is doing well, there was this bit of shame around saying, so yeah, I'm running my business now. Because people you could see people go, oh, okay. Like, and then you don't know what they're thinking. So that, you know, that identity shift was big. I had to really lean into who God said I was versus like what my like CV and my salary and all of that. So it was very difficult. The fear was there. I had to really trust God, and I'm still in that season because when you're an entrepreneur, you know, at the end of the day, I believe God is the source of all of our wealth, right? Like he creates the wealth, he gives it to us, and he uses vessels like jobs and businesses and, companies to give that money to us. But of course, when you're in like your cushioned 9-to-5 job, it can feel like that money's coming from 9 to 5. Yeah. So when you step out and you're doing your business, that is the one time you're like, like every month you're having a business meeting with God and you're just like, look, these are the things that need to happen this month. What's up, And so I've really grown in my trust in God. It's really even helped in other areas of my life where even when something doesn't look like it's going to happen, I'm still holding on because I've experienced him in my business so much. So that trust. And I think he has to have sent you. You have to have that clarity from God versus just leaping out on your own.
I love that scent. I keep hearing it a lot in conversations now where you might have a vision or a desire, but there's this scent moment where it's time to do that. And I should make a joke here, but when I meet people who say, oh, I run my own business, because now it's kind of like a status symbol that I work
I'm
for
an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I work for myself. Like, haha, you work for someone else. And I'm like, I guess 7 years ago, it'd be like, well, you're broke then, basically. But now it's like, oh, I'm in charge of my time and you work for the man. And, and it's funny how the identity thing, it transitions to both spheres. But I really enjoy the fact that you said you were sent, like you knew that departure time. For people that are sort of wrestling, because sometimes I just don't like work and I want to leave. And then I pray and I'm not being sent, but God can do anything, right? I'm like, Lord, release me from this like beast of a system.
We're going to get onto the practical questions really soon because I think Sinead needs some help.
But release me from this, and then I know it's not time. I know. But some people may just think, oh, I'm really bad at my job. I'm having a hard time. Like initially you were. How can we help people to identify you're going to get sent, or, you need to work on this more, you need to learn how to manage your time more before you step out. What little rumblings were you sort of picking up around that time?
So a couple of things on that. I think when God answers or responds to us, or we feel like we've heard him, it's usually either a no, like it's a complete no. And sometimes you even get like the physical evidence where like something doesn't work out, it's like shot in your face, like no. There's a yes, but not right now. And then there's yes, now, right? Like immediately, because you feel that, you just feel, so uncomfortable, you feel restless in that situation, you feel extremely unhappy, you're trying all the things. So that's the, first thing is almost identifying what do I genuinely, and that comes from, obviously, with the relationship, exactly. It's like with every close friend, it's like with our parents or close friends, your friend's body language when you're at dinner and they're like ready to go, or like, if you're married, or your partner's body language, your best friend, your sister, their body language, their signs. And so I think the more time you spend with God, the more time you spend in a place of prayer and worship, you tend to know what God is saying to you in season, or you can sense what God is saying to you in season. So that's the first thing. Second thing is, when you're thinking, do I need to take the leap? Do I need to jump? Do I need to start a business? I think you rightly said earlier, not everyone can do it. Not everyone is, cut out for business. And people in 9-to-5s often say, oh, I'm done with a 9-to-5. I want to start a business. I'm like, that is great. I love it because that's exactly what I do and I help people do. However, all of the insecurities, bad habits, like
they come into the forefront.
The development points, they follow you right into your business. So if you don't have attention to detail in your 9-to-5, you will not have attention to detail in your business. If you are sloppy in your 9-to-5, you will be sloppy in your business. So it's almost like you have to grow that muscle and that capacity. People who are top performers in their 9-to-5 often are top performers in their business, right? So I know there's the passion there, like, oh, I'm not passionate about this, therefore I'm struggling. But there's also things you need to work on. There are things I got feedback from in my investment banking job, but sometimes I see it coming up in my business and I'm like, behave, There's like, getting distracted, always looking for like the exciting thing, because business can get boring. So sometimes your business gets into like this just like flow and you have to do the admin, you have to do all of the, timetables. You have to have a timetable for yourself. Self-management is so key. And if you didn't have that in 9 to 5, and you're always waiting for like validation or cross-checking or correction, you're going to take the same thing to your business. So
When you're coaching as well, just because I'm so interested in this idea of like, is everyone an entrepreneur? Like, my answer is no, right?
Yeah.
But
it's not
I
for
know.
everyone.
But I'm interested when you're coaching or speaking with people who are maybe thinking about I know we're not fully talking just about making the jump, but maybe making a jump like you did from a stable career into something that's like their passion or their business, even if that's surviving. Have you ever thought, don't do it? And have you ever said to somebody like, actually, don't think this is for you?
I've never said that to someone, but I have thought it.
Sorry, because you probably would be a bit savage if you said it to them, but I'm just interested to know.
So I have thought it. And so I would encourage you to kind of go back to your drawing board, seek more clarity. Like, so my business is, we talked about the point around ministry earlier, and my business, it's a business coaching program. It's like an accelerator. But I always throw in the God factor in there. Like in conversations, I would say, pray about it. So women joining, they're like, I'm not saying you have to be a Christian, but it's faith-based. Like I will share about God in my program, like point blank. So I will always say, go back, seek clarity. Just be sure that you're not doing this because it's a trend, or you're not doing this because, you're so desperate. I think you're so desperate for that money, it's that chasing of money versus like, the impact. Yes, I want the extra income. Yes, but if you're doing it from the wrong, mindset, from the wrong place, you don't have the capacity to sustain it. So with people who are not designed for business, they're not cut out for business. One, if you're not willing to step out of your comfort zone and be stretched, like
don't bother.
And when I say stretch, sometimes it's like the scariest things, like go live on your Instagram, like something really small, like introduce your brand to the world. If you're not ready to, look beyond and step out of like validation from friends. So most people can't do anything if their friends haven't like reposted or like told them, this is you're doing so great, you're doing so well. A lot of people can't move, and that's just the way our generation has been, cultured to behave. So I always say you have to be willing to kind of let that go. You have to be very, like, you have to really want it. You have to really want that business. You have to really want it to work, and you have to let go of your ego. And a lot of people, it's very hard. I'm not, a lot of people find it very, very difficult to let go of their egos.
Yeah, and I'm just interested about the motivations, because you're saying people are just desperate for that additional check and not being able to do spend, save, invest at the same time. And, as you're speaking, I'm just thinking about the creativity it takes to have different streams of income. So it can't just be, I'm going to make a lot of money, right? Because there's things you could do. I'm not going to name the bad things I would do if I just wanted to get rich. I'm just saying, there's some bad things that you can get into. But in terms of seeing checks from different places or streams, is that a creativity thing? Is it a personality thing? Is it something innately that maybe God has given people that, you can do this? And sometimes, like Rachel was saying, just because you're good at cooking, it doesn't mean you need to become a caterer, girl. Do you know what I mean? Like, let's be honest. So
because it's sometimes, just to follow on on that question, I guess it's sometimes like if this is also to sometimes build financial stability. If it's an additional income stream, that's kind of the point of it. How do you help people to find what they can do? Maybe is it passive income? Is it, I love to cook too, but am I ever going to cater for 100 people? No. So do you know, it's actually knowing, what's actually going to generate the finance too?
So I think with business, every time someone comes into my program or I work with someone, the first thing we do actually is identifying what that like winning idea is, that profitable idea. So it's like, what do you like? What are you really good at? But what is there a demand for? So it's like at the intersection, because sometimes people come and they're like, I like, I don't know, the most random thing. I'm like, but...
Nobody's buying that, girl. Nobody wants your food. Let me behave, sorry.
I'm passionate about XYZ random thing. I'm like, I love that for you. But like, let's work it back to what is it a demand for? Let's do some market research. What are people looking for? What are people willing to pay before. And then on the other point around multiple streams of income and passive income, the one thing I do teach is, so my way of thinking about multiple streams of income is not always, so I think people think about it as, I'll have an events planning business, then I would like rent properties, then I would, start a shoe company. I don't really think about it that way. I think about it around a portfolio career. So basically, you're good at cooking, right? So you like cooking, you're good at cooking. Maybe you start like a food blog. Maybe you then become a nutritionist and you do some meal plans for people who are very busy at work and they're willing to pay top dollar for it. So you're using the same intellectual,
industry as well. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
So it's not necessarily going and just finding. It's not only about what are people in the market for.
Yeah.
It's kind of looking at what kind of skill have you got and how do you market it in a particular way.
Precisely.
Right.
So what I specifically teach is skills you have right now, because for me, I'm very much anti-painful toil. Like, I don't know if you've seen in the Bible, it's
Me too. Me three.
It says in the Bible, the blessing of God maketh rich, makes you, wealthy, maketh rich without painful toil.
Yes.
So if it feels hustly, if it feels like, I want to do this business idea and this business idea, I'm like, no. I want you to use something that you're already doing right now. You're already doing at work. So sometimes you find someone who's a project manager at work, they're very good with planning. They might be able to be an event planner. Somebody who's like a VA at work, they're an OBM, they might become sort of an OBM or a virtual assistant for other people's businesses.
What's a VA?
So they're like a virtual assistant.
I see, yeah.
Like a business, they're a virtual assistant and then they become someone's business manager.
Right.
So you're using your current skills, your talents, your existing skills. Even sometimes it's things that maybe people in your family or your friends ask you to do, and you just do it with your eyes closed because you're used to it. You don't even realize there's someone out there that's willing to pay for it. So I say a lot of women in corporate, which is my target audience, which is who I tend to work with. A lot of women in corporate are sitting on gold mines that they're not even aware that they have. It's something that is a byproduct of your 9 to 5, a byproduct of your personal life, things that you just do. And there's people out there who are like, oh, where can I find someone who does this? I'm willing to pay for it.
Thank you so much for tuning in today. I'm Sinead, one of your co-hosts.
We know so many of you already watch these conversations. So if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet, hit the button now. It really helps this important content to reach even more women around the world and ensures we can keep bringing these conversations to you.
Let's get back into this episode. I read recently about the purpose for prosperity, and it's really to alleviate the suffering of others. And the more, when I'm asking God for 10 million, obviously he asks me what for, right? And I am starting to realize you need a vision that is bigger than yourself and something to, especially as a believer, it has to be to alleviate something for another person.
Yeah.
And I just wanted to know both of your thoughts on when people are just attaining wealth to get wealth. So you have the skill set now, the streams are coming in and people, it's becoming this braggadocious thing. Oh, my business clocked 8 figures last year. It's just, this constant, and sometimes it's not actual wealth, it's just this showing how good you are at something. How do you think, what's a better way for us to focus our attention when we are bringing these incomes on what would the Lord have me doing right now? Because also people can steal from you as well. People take advantage of you because they know you're doing well. You might be pouring your money into something that maybe is not exactly, where God has called you to. So how also can you spot the needs as well, from that when you're prospering in different ways?
So one thing I always say is target market research, and market research, first of all, starts from prayer. It starts in that prayer room. Right. It starts when you start praying, and then God starts kind of just leading your heart towards a specific group of people. It might be children, it might be women, it might be marriages. You just feel led towards, or it might be anything. It might be just a group of people that maybe God just feels like, I'm sending you to these people. And then that's where it starts from. And you're like, okay, you're sending me to these people, great. And then you take the next step and you're like, okay, what do they need? That's where the market research kind of starts from. And then you go down that route. The one thing that I think always helps is when you've done your market research, you've got some inkling from God, you feel like, okay, I'm directed to this group of people. You take that first step and just kind of test, and you're just like, okay, is there anybody who's in this area that kind of needs this thing? But when I say people should get clarity, is the one prayer we even always pray in Wealthy Woman is, show me how you're using my gifts and my ideas to, to basically add value in terms of your kingdom agenda.
Yeah.
So like whatever you're doing in this season, in this generation, in this time, in this world, how does my business connect to it? That's where purpose really comes from. So if you don't know what your business is doing for God, you then get a lot of money and you're just like, yep, it's time to kind of splurge. Yeah. But then when you're partnering with God, you get the money and you're like, okay, what am I supposed to be doing with this? So I think having that business being connected to a purpose is very important. Like connecting your business and asking God to just show you. And when I say asking God to show you, and I want to just say this so that it's easy for people, because I've been in a journey, in a journey in my faith where I was right at the beginning, right? So I wasn't as familiar with a lot of terms. So I just want to say that it's not always a Morgan Freeman voice.
Yes.
Like,
thank you. Yeah.
Sometimes it's just you see something on Pinterest and you see it again and you see it again. Sometimes that's how God's voice comes. It's not always a thunder. Sometimes it's a whisper. Sometimes it's a friend that says, "Oh, I think you're really good at this. How come you haven't considered it?" Like that's just a sign that you need it in that season. And then you take a step and then God confirms it. And then you see something else on Instagram, so that's where I think you get that direction from, connecting your business to a higher purpose. Yeah.
I think it's a bit of a side point, but I was just thinking when you were saying this, Tomiwa, in the age of information that we live in now, there are so many displays of wealth.
Yes.
And it's kind of like, but what does that even mean? So because we look on Instagram and everywhere, Pinterest, wherever, and we're like, oh, also, if we like nice things, I think we all agree we like nice things, and we kind of see the shoes or the bag or the house, the holidays, whatever it is. And I don't think there's anything wrong with liking and wanting those things either. But I think quite often, my experience has been people's driver for additional income is not really attached to a purpose. It's attached to, I just want to live this kind of lifestyle, which I think as a part of that, I actually think is okay. But as the whole motivation, I kind of think, and I think that's why being an entrepreneur has become so popular, because
I think so.
But I don't even know how real it is, because you're looking at people's images and seeing what they're doing and thinking, people almost internalize, if I become an entrepreneur, this is what I can do.
Yeah. I think it's put a new spin on that, saying like looking good is good business, because a lot of a lot of people use that to sell. So in my industry, for example, especially if you're a business coach and you're helping people with business, one of the things that people tend to use as their marketing strategy is to share their numbers. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but for me personally, it just didn't feel in integrity to do that, just because there's so much background. Like if I share like a screenshot of my Stripe, you don't know kind of the background, what are the costs, like you don't. So it's a little bit, at the edge of the spectrum for me personally. It's not a bad thing, but it's at the edge of the spectrum. But what that does is, indirectly puts you under that pressure to then make that money at any cost, so you can share that wealth and show pictures of yourself and, so that you can attract people to pay for, your business or whatever. So I think searching your heart is so important, and, just knowing the things. We all like nice things, and I think many of us, even like as, daughters of God, like we do like the luxuries, and that's okay. But I think just being very clear and always searching your heart. Am I doing this for the right reasons? Am I still honoring God with what I'm doing, with the works of my hands? It's so important. Yeah. It's so important.
I also think there must be a real exhaustion if that's your major goal. Really. Yeah. And might say it in a bit of a nicer way and a bit more of a correct way that people accept and it sounds good. Yeah. But I think that must become exhausting, because when it's completely detached from purpose rather than being a byproduct of pursuing kind of just where God has got you, or using your gifts and talents in whatever way that is in your work or service, I imagine that becomes very exhausting too.
Yeah. Absolutely.
The fulfillment, like the lack of fulfillment. I always think about
fulfillment.
That to like, obviously I might be hating on them, but I see a picture and I say, but are you fulfilled?
Are you jealous?
I know, for real. I'm like, I would like a Hermes bag too, but I'm content, in my house, in my tracksuit. Yes, but the fulfillment element, I don't know if you guys have experienced, you're doing something for God, and you're in the right place, you have peace. Not everything is perfect, but you have this overwhelming peace, it's just, I can't even explain how amazing it is.
Yeah.
And I always, just when I think I'm going to rob a bank, I think the peace that I'm experiencing now is unmatched. This is the peace that the Bible speaks about.
Yeah.
You can't explain it. And that's what keeps me in my lane, basically, when I'm seeing people taking on different streams of income and different things.
Yeah.
You know, for you both, what is that thing that keeps you centered on, this is what God has me doing right now, and I would love another stream of income or something else, but asking those questions that you're saying, is it honoring God?
Yeah.
Is this contributing to the kingdom?
Yeah.
What is that, you know, that connection that you have where you say, you know what, Lord, I sense your peace here and I'm gonna stay on this. Yeah.
I think for me, there's a constant prayer that I always pray. It's very simple and very short, but I think it's helped in my business because even after you started this business that's honoring God, you can get distracted.
Okay.
You know, you start in the business, it's doing really well, and then you start looking at other people and you're like, oh, okay, I like that. I like a bit of that. You know, I want an office. But I'm always like, you know, God, purge me of selfish ambition. Like, help me get rid of selfish ambition.
Deep
you
prayer.
know, it's a very deep prayer. You know,
Not ready to pray, just
especially if you're like ambitious, you're a bit of a type. I don't want to say type A because I know type B people are also like ambitious. I'm not, but you know, if you're very like driven, I want what I want. You know, checklist. Like I'm an Excel girly. I want this by this age. You know, so you always have to kind of take a step back constantly and just be like, you know, I'm just hoping we're aligned. You know, just checking. Like, and I think that's a great way, just a practical way. I try to do that as much as I remember, and every time I stop feeling that sense of peace, I that's a sign to me that maybe I'm, you know, I'm veering away from what he wants me to be doing in my business. So then I go back and I'm like, okay, you know, maybe a retreat, maybe a 2-day fast, maybe a bit of time away from the business, a bit of time away from Instagram. Because with Instagram, right, when you scroll, you're not even aware of some of the messages you receive. And, you know, you start desiring something and you're like, do I really desire that? Or am I desiring it because I've seen it on TikTok 5 times today, right? So you have to keep checking your internal benchmark, which is God, right? Yeah.
That's the same for me. So I think I actually have to remove myself from any spaces, whether it's a conversation or it's online, anything for me that is, I can feel actually it's wearing on me, it's a distraction. It's almost like I've got like an inner war sometimes, I would say, between like, okay, I'm at peace, I'm content, I feel I'm where God wants me to be. But then I'm like, oh, the reality, and it is the reality of, oh, but I need to build some additional streams of income, which I love your point of view, Tomiwa, of how we do that and checking our heart. But I'm also like, oh, but this, then I can do this. And that that can very quickly pull me that way. And then I feel dissatisfied. And I'm thinking, God, is this really where you've got me right now? Oh, maybe I should have done this. Why don't I do this next? And I'm getting all the ideas, but I feel strife is the only way I can describe it. Stress about it, not like, oh, this is going to be hard, but almost like I feel I'm being pulled in a direction that I don't really know is great for me. Whereas more in the middle, like the practical side of, okay, God, this is where you've got me. This is how I'm going to use what you've given me to generate these additional streams. That's from a point of health. For me, it's when I'm seeing too many things, hearing too many things that everybody else is doing, I very easily get distracted. So I have to remove myself from that. And I suppose I do. It's just, for me, it's simply praying, God, I've got to show me what's good here and show me what's not. And kind of help me to deal with it. It's like that word you said, purge almost.
Yeah, it's like there's purge me of that selfish ambition. I think even, you know, very great point that you mentioned earlier. Some people are actually called to corporate for this season. There are things you're supposed to be doing and God is using you to do in that office right now. And there are some people who God says, well, we've been there for this season. I needed you to get that training. Now I needed to send you to the mountain of media or government or business. And so it's recognizing, you know, you have to get close to him first to recognize what do you have me, you know, doing in this season, and then responding to that. And so I always say, you know, I'm not anti 9 to 5. That's the thing I always make clear. I had such a great experience, incredible training. You know, my work ethic basically was 100% from my corporate life. So I'm not anti 9 to 5. I'm only anti living a life that's it's underfulfilling, it's not in line with the purpose God has for you. So if you're a woman that says, well, I feel God is calling me to business, but I'm afraid or I'm doubting, that's when we can have a conversation. But if you're not sure yet, I'm not about to be leading you. I'm not like, oh, start a business. I do that in my friend group. I'm that friend. If my friend, like, they hate me because they're like, if I tell you one thing, you're like, yep, this is a business, like, as a joke. But if you're, I'm
so
that friend.
Girl.
I'm that friend, like, in the group chat, like, oh, I love making flowers. Let's start flower business. I'm that friend, but obviously,
but that's also kind of connected to you and who you are.
Exactly, it's my personality.
Yeah.
I've thought of like how this could be like a 6-figure business in 10 minutes, like, and they're just like, no, I wasn't saying that for business. Like, step back. But if you're someone who's like, I'm not sure, I just feel like I'm lacking this, and we need to connect with God first and get some clarity there.
So Tomiwa, if for people now who are thinking, okay, well, I'm probably going to stay in my job maybe, or I don't know if I want to move right now, but I've got to diversify my income, I've got to add an additional stream. What kind of practical things or mindsets could they be working on now before they kind of make that shift, just to prepare them and put them in the best stead?
Absolutely. The first and the biggest mindset shift for anyone who wants to start a side hustle is just repeat to yourself, there's no such thing as fixed income. Like, there's no such thing as, most people think, well, my contract says I'm earning 70K a year, therefore that's the most I can ever earn. And that's the biggest block I've seen with especially women in corporate. Like, you just rely on HR to tell you how, and you think that's what you're worth. And so you're just like, yep, 70K, I'm good. And then you find your comfort in there. So that's the first mindset shift. You need to understand there's no income ceiling. Like, you can earn as much as you want to earn, right? So that's the first thing. That will really put you in a place where your mind starts to expand into other ideas. Like, the moment you think, oh, actually, I can earn more than 5K a month, your brain is such an incredible asset. It will just start to think of ideas, right? And I know people, people maybe say, oh, that was like my intuition. It's the Holy Spirit, he starts telling you, by the way, this idea is a good idea for you. By the way, and sending people to you. So that's the first thing, opening your mind to the idea of earning more. Second thing, more practically speaking, is, sacrificing. There are 3 things you probably need to sacrifice if you're looking to increase your sources of income. Number 1 is your time. You're going to have to sacrifice your time. It's the food that success eats. Like, if you want to be successful at anything, something must give. When I speak to people and say, well, I have this and I have this, I need to go Saturday, I have brunch. I'm like, if you just sacrifice, so you have to sacrifice your time, whether it be mornings. I'm not you must be a 4 a.m. person if you're not. Yes. But if it's mornings, if it's your lunch break at work, where can you steal pockets of the day to work on your business, to really invest in that business? The third thing you sacrifice, so I said the time is the first. Second thing is, you have to sacrifice the fear of getting it wrong, the fear of public failure. Most people aren't actually scared of failure. They're scared of public failure. They don't want to, you have to let that go completely because no one really cares. Yeah. So that fear. And then the third thing is some money. Like, you have to sacrifice some money. I'm not saying it's billions, but you have to maybe pay for a book or order that first book on Amazon. Most times people say, oh, I don't want to invest in my business because I haven't made any money in the business yet. It's like a surgeon saying, I don't want to pay for medical school because I haven't operated on a patient before. Or Michael Jordan saying, well, I'm not going to go to the gym because I haven't won any championships, yet. You have to kind of give, when you pay attention. So buy your first book about running a business, but pay for the first course. If you want to become a web designer or something, whatever, pay for the course. Hire your first coach or buy your first, just a little. I'm not saying do the most, but just start with that. So those are the 3 things I think you need to sacrifice. For me, it was train journeys on the way to work. I started reading books then, updating my Instagram real quick, and then obviously the fear, and then I started investing in, courses to develop myself and books. So I would say that, and give yourself a timeline. Work expands to fill available time. So if you say, I'll get to that side hustle one day, it'll be one day. But if you say, by the end of this year, I want to start a side hustle that's at least bringing me £500 every month as a starting point, then you find a way to do that.
Yeah, that's amazing. That was really wonderful. We have some audience dilemmas that we'd love you to weigh in on. So the first one is, where's the line between wanting wealth and being greedy? I do feel like there's a point when it becomes selfish, as we were discussing earlier, especially when there are so many people who are in need in today's world. Where do you personally draw the line?
Such a loaded question.
I don't know why you're looking at me. I'm waiting.
Okay, so money isn't a bad thing.
Okay.
Having more of it isn't a bad thing. Yeah. I think, like we've all talked about earlier, it's the love and the desperation for it that is a bad thing. And I personally believe that if you have a good heart, when there's more money in your account, things I've been able to do when I've earned more, I've been able to give more to charity. I've been able to tithe more in church. I've been able to, treat members of my family who maybe I otherwise wouldn't have, and just added some value in that way. I've spread God's love through my access to wealth. And God doesn't, I believe that God wants us to have more wealth. He wants us to, spread that blessing, spread that joy around the world, show his love and all of that. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I understand the point around when saying, well, people around the world are suffering. But for me, I'm like, if I have more wealth, I can start solving the problems that are that I can see. Yes, that I'm in proximity to. And then obviously, the more women and people of God have more money, that's the whole point of the kingdom agenda, to really impact the world. So I think my advice is, I wouldn't say hold yourself back from it, because money is not a bad thing. Having wealth is not a bad thing. Don't hold yourself back from it because you think, oh, there's other people suffering. Because then if you don't have more of it, you're also not helping. You're not helping, you're not comfortable, you're not helping. So the problem exists and it doesn't go away. Yeah.
I don't even know if it answers the question, but just thinking about what you were saying, for me, it's all on motivation every single time.
Yes.
Because money is neutral, actually. Yep. And having resource is an opportunity to, yes, have comfortability, have nice things, but actually to create change. Yeah. And I think one of the things definitely in British society is we automatically think about everything that's down and out and everything that's broken. But I love that I love what you said about looking what is around you and going, actually, how do I create change there? Yeah. It's not always, about go to the world's biggest charity. I think it's sometimes just going, actually using my creativity and my gift and my resource. How do I create change where I feel God's asking me to? I love that. But I think when the motivation's off and it's only about self, the layer of wealth is comfortability, isn't it? And joy. And it might make you happy and comfortable. But the security aspect of that is a lie ultimately, because it can be taken away in a moment. So feeling secure in your life, feeling that everything's going to be okay, that's kind of the lie of getting more. And I suppose I've experienced it where I've thought, well, if I just have that or do that, actually that will just help me to move forward and be a bit more happy. I get there, I'm like, I'm happy, but that fades really quickly. And it's kind of just not enough. I'm like, but where's the next thing? And it's like an endless pursuit when it's from the wrong motivation. Whereas when it's from a healthy motivation, you become, I guess, more of a channel of, okay, God, you can trust me with this. That doesn't mean I'm going to deny myself of nice things. We're not saying that. But I'm going to be a channel for actually where you've put me, I'm going to use it for good.
And there's so many places in the Bible where, you can see where he's saying, I have the power to provide exceedingly and abundantly, not I have the power to provide just so you can pay your rent. It's exceedingly and abundantly. And also God uses you as a vessel. So sometimes, you get a big check and God says, I have need for that. Right?
Yes.
And that obedience, I have need for that. You're going to pay that to so and so charity, or someone's gonna reach out and need this, and you're going to give them that money.
Has that happened to you before?
Yes,
right.
I've had some nice chunky checks coming in my business, and God is like, yes, so that you're going to transfer it. So I'm thinking, I was going to go on
you'd already had your sights set on something.
I was literally going on Bloomingdale's, I was like, now what's up? And but then he will put, sometimes I would then say, and that's again, as your relationship with God grows, I really wanted those shoes,
Yeah, I'm thinking about the faith muscles you've exercised by building that discipline in your career, building that giving And so then it's not as hard to trust God. Even when the money goes, I can get it back.
Exactly.
But if you're doing it your way, selfishly, you haven't built that muscle.
Absolutely.
So when it goes, what are you gonna start to step out on, you know? So,
absolutely.
Yeah,
and there's a saying that you can't outgive God.
Yes.
You can't. Like, there's no amount that you could give to someone or donate or that he couldn't, like, you just can't outgive him. So every time I feel that nudging, you know, sometimes you feel it and you're like, no, I didn't hear right. Girl, no. But then you come back to it and like, okay, fine. And then you do it. But then the thing that you thought you needed somehow is provided for. And you know that that's God. It's like your dealings with him, you know, that's how you confirm where, you know, without sounding transactional, but we're still in the business of me and you in a relationship. I still pledge my allegiance to you all of the time. I'm still obedient to you.
Yeah. Do you have time for one more?
Yeah.
So this is quite a practical one, but it says, I'm currently working 9 to 5 on an average salary. Since the cost of living crisis, it now means I'm living paycheck to paycheck. I'm someone who loves traveling. However, I've really had to strip back to afford the basics. What can I do right now to diversify my income and make my money go further?
Yeah.
Great question.
Yeah, so I'm going to give a twofold answer to that.
Okay.
And I'm really glad that she kind of touched on that in the questions. Because I always say signs that you need at least one additional source of income is, I always call people Henrys. So you're a high earner, but not rich yet, right? So you're a Henry. Like, that means if your job, for whatever reason, didn't pay you this month, it'll be a catastrophe, like it'll be a disaster. That's a sign that you need some level of support. The second sign is when you look at people who, for me, it was one of the things for me, I look at people who are 10 years ahead of me, the partners and the directors. I'm like, do I really want this life? Like, is this the life that is on my vision board in Pinterest? Because if the math isn't mathing, you need to close that gap, right? You need some additional source of income. Now, in terms of what to do right now, same thing we talked about. I would say look within you. Most times people think I need to start a business and they look for the most complex idea, but it's like, you can literally start a business with what you do now. Maybe you work in a financial company. Maybe you know how to budget. Maybe you know how to do something, you know, something that just someone 3 steps ahead of you is asking for. Maybe you know how to interview really well. Like, you're good in, you know, you've always aced your interviews. Maybe you know how to save, you know how to invest. You can turn that knowledge into profit, quite simply. So I would say start within you, because that's also it's cheaper to do that. It's not capital intensive, it's your brain. And then just start, you know, thinking of how can I package this expertise into a business, into maybe a coaching business, a course business, a consulting business. Start with one thing though. Start with one thing, and then start testing that, you know. And then last point is, when I started my side hustle, at the time when it was a side hustle, when it came to financial goals, I started setting myself like, maybe that one thing. So maybe this business will make enough to pay for like my lashes and, you know, just that one thing. Then this business will make enough to pay for, you know, a trip. This business will make enough. So you build that momentum in your business. And before you know it, you're like, by the time I left, I was surpassing my income on some months. And I was just like, okay, we've grown, you know, so start with one bill that it covers and then build up from there. Yeah.
That's great advice.
Practical.
Yeah.
It's really good.
Tomiwa, thank you so much. I feel I've had a free class.
Yes.
Free program, even. So that's my bargain. Thank you.
And I'd just love to know, like, before we finish, as the Magnify community, how can we support you? Where can we find you online?
So I have my business accelerator, which is, again, for women specifically in corporate who have skills that, you know, you're in corporate, so you already work a 9 to 5, and then you want to turn that into a business, quite practically speaking. So I would do that on a page called 9 to Freedom. It's a business accelerator, and that's our Instagram page. Or you can just find my personal brand page on Tomiwa Da-Silva, which has all of the sort of ministry work, 9 to Freedom work, all the things I do. Yeah.
That's amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. This was so great.
This was great.
Yeah, it was.
Thank you.
Glam.
Thank you for joining us for this week's conversation. We hope you gleaned as much from it as we did.
If you haven't already, subscribe to our channel to keep up to date with all of our episodes at the Magnify Conversations.
And if you have a story to share and would like to be featured on the conversations, get in touch with Team Magnify through magnifycollective.com and head over to our contact form.
We'll see you next Monday for another installment from all of our team and crew. See you next week.